Can I say it's one of your favorite NBA master teams? Is it the Warriors?
Absolutely. Yeah. One of our longest partner teams for sure.
Yeah, that's right. Let me check on time. It is 10:01, folks, so we are officially in the Mizzen Meets. I know we're gonna let some folks kind of roll on in to join us. In the meantime, I'm joining you all from Santa Monica, California, so a few miles, what is that, south of where Nick is, same state. I've got cloudy weather. I don't know, Nick, what you got. I mean, San Francisco is always like 15 degrees colder than LA.
Same. We're cloudy here
In the
today too.
meantime, yeah, okay.
Not
All
too
right, all
much.
right. Cool. Thanks for the Mizzen team joining us today. A lot of good folks went into kind of put some work into getting this Mizzen Meets put together. And as a reminder, it's the people that are meant to be here will be here. And so we always find that the Mizzen Meets conversations, because they're recorded, they're good for posterity's sake. And so we can share this out post today. I know folks it's the beginning of the school year. And so we're hoping that at some point in the year, they can reference this conversation to know more about what makes NBA Math Hoops magic. And so, folks, again, I want to introduce myself. My name is Carlos Santini, CEO of Mizzen Education. I've been fortunate enough to be in this amazing work of out of school time for over 22 years. And in those 22 years, I've met some incredible people. Ever since coming to Mizzen in 2021, I've met even more amazing people. And that's what Mizzen Meets is about. It's about spending time with interesting people who are doing awesome things in youth development. And today is no exception. We have a great conversation lined up with Nick. I will say that I want to thank the Mizzen Education team for, again, helping us put this together. So the team over at our engagement and experiences work with Haley and Kristen and all the folks who are behind the scenes doing this good stuff. We are very excited for this conversation because it's not just about getting to know the man behind the great program, the person behind the great program, but also where we want to celebrate the fact that we launched NBA Math Hoops content like 2 weeks ago, after announcing an official partnership with Learn Fresh back in February of 2022. I don't know if you remember, Nick, but we were at now the crypto.com arena. I will always have a hard time with that. For me, it's forever Staples Center. And we were so honored to be able to launch that official Learn Fresh partnership back in February. We had some students from your San Antonio program joining us for that cool event. And so now here we are a few months later, launching the actual content behind that partnership. So that was super cool back then. And I did say, if you caught some of my social media stuff, I did say I was going to rock some gear. This is my first time ever wearing a jersey for an official work-related event. So typically it's a polo. I'm a little bit of a nerd. I think, Nick, you and I have a very similar style. The polos, the button-up shirts. But for this one, especially with Kobe Day being a few days ago, right? 8/24 being Kobe Day. I am rocking number 24 today. So it's just cool to be kind of in this NBA vibe. So let's get into this conversation, right? So I'm going to introduce to you Nick Monzi. Nick Monzi is the CEO and founder of Learn Fresh, an innovative organization that uses sports and entertainment to inspire young people to engage with STEM learning. I paraphrase that. I'm not reading right off your website, Nick, but you're doing some amazing work beyond just NBA Math Hoops. So I just wanted to say welcome and how are you feeling today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Carlos. Excited to be here. Excited to chat a little bit with someone who we've known for a long time. I think we met for the first time in maybe 2015 or so in the Bay Area. And so we've had a long partnership through After School All Stars and now with Mizzen. Excited to just dive into conversation and talk about our shared passion for this way of learning. It's something that I know we both believe in, and we'll have hopefully a lot of insight to share with folks today.
Yeah, and thanks for reminding me of that. You're in the very city where I first came across NBA Math Hoops. And then I think maybe a few months later, I actually got to meet you in person. I'm going to show a picture of you. I already gave you the heads up, folks, but I'll say this about Nick. Nick is known to always wear a button-up shirt and a jacket. And so the myth has it, legend has it, that Nick has never been seen not wearing a jacket. So I have proof that that is not true. He has actually not worn a jacket in the past.
This is true.
So we're going to get to that in a second. But I just remember, Nick, and I think today, as we look at the theme of our conversation, we talk about this idea of healthy competition, engagement, and overall just the magic of the learning methodology and even just the learning style or even the vibe that you created around not just the MBA Math Hoops product, but some of your other initiatives that we'll hear about a little later. But let me just kind of paint the picture. This is 2015-ish, and I'm with After School All Stars, which is a national after-school program provider, which some of my colleagues were a part of that movement, and so we were launching programs in the Bay, in Oakland, and I was visiting San Francisco, and I had heard about this thing called MBA Math Hoops. And I can't quite remember where I saw it, how I heard about it, but I said, I must see it. And your organization was so awesome. And I think back then, Nick, you were the chief operations officer. I think you were the
That's
COO
correct. Yep.
of LearnFresh back then. And someone just arranged a site visit. I walked into this elementary classroom in San Francisco, opened the doors, and I just see kids, man, just like competing, pumped, hyped, nervous, excited. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I see the game board. And then I see, and I understand that there's math behind all of this. There's quick math facts taking place alongside the great sport of basketball. Each students had player basketball or basketball player cards that represented their players. And I just could not believe what I was seeing. And I sat down, and some of the kids were like, do not mess with my game right now. You just sit there, don't mess with my game because I need to win. And so I just that's the picture I remember right out of the gate, is walking in and seeing that amazing magic. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second, but just hold on to that picture, folks. Hold on to that picture. But I do want to celebrate a few things about Nick. So first, Nick, congratulations on receiving your MBA from, let me just make sure I get this right, the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Right. And the cool thing is that you just recently walked and the ceremony was it held in the University of Chicago, in the Chicago campus?
It was, yeah, in
Yeah.
Chicago.
But you also attended the London campus as part of the experience. And so that is super cool. So you're worldwide, Nick, which is pretty awesome. And I got to say, you being in London, we've got some foodies that will probably watch this. And I know we have foodies on here now. But what was your favorite meal while
Oh
in
my,
London? Is
that's
there
such a
something you
good
like?
question, London. But I would say so. London is known for its Indian food. The Tamil Prince is this small, almost like pub-like restaurant. They have incredible Indian food. So
Okay, I did
recommended.
not know that.
But
I didn't.
London, if you love food, you should go to London for sure.
Okay, and it's funny because I think they've grown into being a more of a culinary destination. I think for a while there, London didn't have the best reputation for food.
For
I
sure.
don't
I mean, British food is different than London food, I would say.
There you go. There you go. So very cool. I did not know that about Indian food being one of the things to kind of eat and experience in London. The other is related to the work you're doing, which is you had a goal of reaching and serving 1 million young people, and you accomplished that. And I think you did it earlier than anticipated. I don't know. I might be wrong.
It was around the time that we anticipated. I'd
Around.
say
Okay. All
early
right.
early in 2024,
Uh-huh.
and a huge accomplishment. I mean, our whole team has been putting in so much work over many years now to build the foundations necessary to get to the scale that we're at now. And for us, I think the most exciting part is that 1 million students is the tip of the iceberg. There are so many, and we can talk more about this later, the international potential of what we do, but there are so many young people around the world who we've yet to reach through our work that we are now laying the groundwork for in other ways. And so, yeah, it's an incredible accomplishment, an incredible benchmark, and it's also a signal of what's to come.
That's great, man. And look, uh, over here with us here at Mizzen, we want to continue to support you in climbing that no and growing that number, right? 2 million, 3 million. And so we're just happy to be alongside you in this journey of continuing to serve young people. So congratulations on 1 million young people. I think over 9,000 educators, probably closer to 10,000 educators that you are working through and working with. So great milestone. And then and selfishly, a milestone for us. I mean, we launched content with you all about 2 weeks ago. And so I highly recommend folks to visit, and maybe Haley, you can drop the link here. Visit Mizzen.org, and the first lesson, you are able to understand the NBA Math Hoops concept. And you also, there's a link where you can order the NBA Math Hoops product. So create your free account, get into that first lesson of NBA Math Hoops, and you can actually put in an order request for the board game itself. And so, Nick, can you break down? So, first of all, congrats on those accomplishments, right?
Thank you.
And before we break it down, I have to show the picture because this is the, my one of my favorite business authors talks about when it comes to looking at performance of corporations or industries, he always says, first who, then what, right? And so we started with who, and I want to end with who by showing this image. And so, folks, for you who do not believe that Nick does not wear jackets, here it is. Uh,
The best part about this image is that Jeremiah is on the call right now, and he's in this photo.
oh, no way. Oh my gosh. What are the odds? What are the
That's
odds, man? So this is circa 2016 in Washington, D.C. We have partnered up with you, Nick, at this point to do some work with our youth leadership kind of experience with the After School All-Stars. And so this is you, 2016, not wearing a jacket and looking young, man. Actually, you know what? Not too bad. You kind of held up. You've held up,
yeah,
man. You're looking pretty good.
not bad. Thank you.
So there you go. I had to throw in a little bit of that in there for you. But all right, so let's get into the NBA Math Hoops work, right?
For
So
sure.
we talked about this idea of magic, but part of that magic is the tangible experience of playing the game, the connection to the sports and entertainment work of the NBA, WNBA. My daughter and I have played this game. When you gave us a copy of it about a year ago, she loved it. And there's been times where we actually drill some of the stuff that we did this a few times where the shots that we took during the game, we live right across the street from a park and a basketball hoop. So we were
Mhm.
trying out to see if the percentages held up, right, of our player. Can we actually, do our percentages hold up in real life when it comes to shooting either a 2-point or 3-point shot? So we've had a lot of fun. But talk to us a little bit about just the engagement with the NBA Math Hoops program. Where does it start, and how do you create that magic?
For sure. Well, there are a couple of things that I really love about the program. One, and again, this is special because Tim is on the call right now, but the NBA Math Hoops game that everyone plays was built by a teacher in their own classroom, right? And so Tim was a math educator, still based in San Diego, California. But I think there's a reality that a lot of the curriculum that is used in classrooms around the country, maybe it's built by former teachers or, people who've had a little bit of time in the classroom, maybe it isn't, but it's not often built by someone who's working with students on a daily basis as they're developing the products. And I think that's reflective in the way that NBA Math Hoops and inherently our other experiences that have been built over time show up with students. The NBA Math Hoops game, when it's played, it's inherently exciting, it's inherently motivating, it builds confidence in students, it does a lot of things that your standard math curriculum just doesn't do. And so that enthusiasm around the actual game itself is something that sits at the core of the program, and then everything is built out from there. And then the curriculum, which we're partnering to deliver to educators, because really our ultimate goal is to make every teacher a learn fresh educator, right? And so through our partnership, we're going to be able to expand access to what we do to more people. But the curriculum is really built to mimic a professional sports season in the classroom or in an out-of-school time program. And that means, starting with a contract signing, right? Having every student sign a sportsmanship contract. That means having a player draft where students get to analyze player statistics or use a salary cap and build a roster. That means having a trade deadline and then a championship tournament at the end of the season in your classroom. And then along the way, developing competency around core math skills, particularly at the elementary middle school level, but also social and emotional skills, right? What are the things that happen on the court? Lessons around teamwork, sportsmanship, integrity, compromise, resilience. Those skills are brought into the classroom or brought into the more traditional learning environment through MBA Math Hoops, and allows students to be able to work on some of these interpersonal skills, even if they're not an athlete or even if they're not performing in a band as part of a collaborative group, right? Math classroom historically has not been the most collaborative space. We are helping to change that through the work that we're doing.
Yeah. You know, what I really appreciate about what you shared is this idea that you first set the stage. You create these kind of real world scenarios around the experience. It's not just come in, sit down, play the game. It's a lead up, and you mimic some of the real world kind of scenarios of a draft, right?
Yeah,
Of using teams, of managing a team, et cetera, et cetera. So you follow a very similar kind of approach that the sport itself follows. That's number one. Number two, that you integrate other components beyond math. Because let's face it, and I'll say this, the team and I, we played as part of one of our organizational retreats. We spent time playing NBA math hoops. And the idea of sitting down and doing quick math in front of others was kind of like, it's a little nerve-wracking, to do math live. It's almost like when you go out and you go to a restaurant and you got to figure out the tip, right? I
yeah,
mean, I'm sure, folks, that you've been out there and you look at that, you're trying to round up and you're trying to figure out the tip percentage and you're trying to figure out that total. You're doing that math live right next to your spouse or partner. So it's just doing math on the fly in front of others can be a nervous experience. It can create some anxiety. So
for
how have
sure.
you, in the fact that you combine social and emotional learning elements into STEM learning, I think is also admirable, and that you created this sense of collaboration and teamwork. And I've seen young people sit side by side, and part of the experience is that teams trade responsibilities, right? And one moment someone's doing the math, the other they're doing the spinner and choosing what type of shot they're gonna take. And they support one another. And I see young people kind of leaning over, kind of whispering in the other person's ear, like, hey, try this, or actually kind of round up, or let's kind of fix that error. I've seen that, and that collaboration takes away some of this pressure of being a math whiz.
Definitely. And going back to the context, one of the things that we've worked to replicate through our other programs, we have an initiative now with the MLS for building and piloting a program that's focused on touring artists and in environmental literacy. All of our programs strive to have authenticity, and it's not just authenticity in the sense of having real professional athletes involved or using real player data, but also authenticity in terms of format. Like what does a sports season really look like? How does that show up in the classroom, right? What does a performing artist tour look like? How does that show up in the classroom? Our I would say sometimes I've noticed that our programs, particularly in like funding environments, can be minimalized because it's in the format of a board game or something like that. But that board game is actually at the core of something that feels incredibly real for young people. I'll never forget this. Colleen, who's on our team, she always describes to anyone who will listen that when she was working in after school programs, the students really felt like they were part of the Warriors. She's based here in the Bay Area. They would go home and they would say like, I'm on the team with Steph Curry, right? Like that is such a special environment to be able to create for students to feel like they're part of something bigger. They're part of a national community or global community. They're part of their local professional sports team because that team is supporting them. They're connected to their favorite artist. And so that authenticity is really at the core of how we think about program design. And, sometimes I think programs can be, or curricula can be kind of non-serious, right? It can be, made to be childlike. We think it's important to like use the real world. Kids are connected to the real world, especially with social media and their access to technology now. Like let's make things as real as possible.
That's so cool. And let's give credit to where credit is due. And Tim, as an educator, look what you've created, right? This really incredible legacy of really taking mathematics and making it so much more. This concept of belonging, authenticity, and I've seen how NBA teams really kind of own and have adopted NBA math hoops. It's something that they're excited about. It's not just the players, but the coaches and other members of NBA teams really show a sense of connection to the program. So Tim, I'm going to put you, I don't know, brother. I'd love to hear. I mean, you're here, you're the originator. I mean, any thoughts as you're hearing this, as you hear about where NBA Math Hoops is today? Like, what are you thinking? How do you feel about what you've created?
Well, thank you. I was not expecting to speak today. I just wanted to
No, no, we
sit
have
in. I
to.
wanted to sit in and support Nick.
Yeah,
I guess the thing I want to say is, as a teacher, as someone who's worked in education for 44 years and who developed this many years ago, and every element you see in terms of the game was intentional in terms of kids working together, in terms of negotiating and everything. But as a teacher, to create something that you know is powerful, but to have the opportunity for it to get out there and get used and to be, I have tremendous, tremendous respect for Nick and for the entire Learn Fresh team. I can't say enough about the work that they have done to provide this opportunity, and they've taken the core of what was created, but they've built on top of it and added to it. And their passion and energy and just love of kids and teachers is so prevalent in everything they do. So I thank you for giving me a minute. I wasn't expecting this.
yeah.
But I want to throw it back to Nick because, like I said, I have such tremendous respect for Nick and the team that he's built and the work that they do.
Awesome. Well, Tim, thank you for being a good sport. And it's really incredibly important to hear from the Godfather, right? The Godfather of NBA math hoops, and to give honor to where honor is due. So congratulations, Tim, on this impact that you're having worldwide, amongst millions of young people. So super, super cool. I know we talked about this element of love and magic and authenticity and connection, Nick, but there's also some real research and data that goes into this. And I'll say this, right? Because we'll talk a little bit about the support that you get to make this happen. I'd be remiss to not really thank the Mott Foundation for allowing this partnership to take hold, and for us to be able to expand this to more and more young people and programs around the country. So special thanks to the Mott Foundation and obviously the Overdeck Family Foundation for their continued support of your work, Nick. I think they're one of your, if not the biggest champion. One of the elements of your partnership with Overdeck is your continued growth in data and research. Can you talk a little bit about what's the data and the machine behind the inspiration and the magic that we see? Because it doesn't happen by accident, right? What investments, what focus, what type of data do you dig into to better understand what engages young people and the outcomes you're striving for?
For sure. So I first want to just recognize Dr. Kirk Walters, who's now based at Wested. He came alongside NBA Math Hoops and then Learn Fresh as an organization very, very early on to help us build institutional measurement systems to be able to do an annual evaluation of NBA Math Hoops and just embed a data practice into our organization from the beginning. And I think we were really lucky that he was excited about what we do and committed his time and energy really at almost no cost for most of a decade, to just help us have sound data policy from our initial launch. Overdeck has been fantastic in a number of ways, but they've really helped us grow in two specific areas. One, strengthening our full-time capacity for research and evaluation, and we now have Dr. Megan Darnley from a graduate from Indiana University on our team who is focused on not only, pre-post evaluation and MOUs with school districts and analyzing testing data, but also helping us strengthen our internal use of data to better train teachers and better manage all of the input that we're getting from educators and students, make better decisions around our fundraising practice, et cetera. So that's been one core investment that Overdeck's made that's really helped us. The other is starting to fund experimental research. And so this summer, we launched a randomized control trial for the MBA Math Hoops program in Jackson, Mississippi, alongside Jackson Public Schools. That study is going to run through next summer and into the following school year, and then will ultimately be the stepping stone for us to do an RCT during the school year for the program. And I'm actually having some preliminary conversations about that this week out here in the Bay Area. So we, recognize, one, that research is expensive. It's not something that's easy for most programs or organizations to do. But we also recognize that it can be a catalyst for program improvement and ultimately growth, right? Increased funding and commitments from new partners. So the relationship with Overdeck has been incredibly important for that. And I think we're just, again, at the very, very beginning of a very much longer process that'll involve evaluating multiple programs over time and hopefully also exploring international evaluation. I'd really love to know more about what the program does for young people in other countries and other parts of the world.
That's fantastic, Nick. And maybe just a quick note on for folks who will be watching this. When you talk about randomized controlled trials, what does that look like for LearnFresh in your programs?
Yeah. So in Jackson, as an example, there's an ongoing summer program that's funded by the school district. There is a STEM component to that program, right? And so WestEd this past summer worked with the district to randomly select at the student level a cohort of young people who would participate in MBA Math Hoops, and then set up a control group of students who are using kind of the regular run-of-the-mill STEM program that is part of normal district programming. And so both groups were pre and post tested. There's going to be a third assessment that's taken at the end of the upcoming school year to evaluate growth across a few areas. One, math improvement or math proficiency. Two, social and emotional development, how those different kind of ingredients that I was talking about before show up in terms of student growth. And then three, enthusiasm and confidence around math learning generally. Like, what is the program doing to make students feel better about themselves as math learners? Those components are at the core of our own evaluation, which is a part of the research study. And then the other layer is using state testing data, district collected data to also track student growth over time.
So you mentioned something really important here in terms of math identity and math confidence. We know that STEM learning, math identity, those have been hot button topics in not just K-12, but even in youth development programs. And for me to witness such great joy and excitement around math and bringing down some of these walls of, of young people not feeling they can do quick math and be confident in the outcome. What advice do you have for folks who are designing STEM learning programs, who are trying to build math programs that are inclusive and that build confidence, that mirror maybe some of your learnings as you've designed the LearnFresh curricula across various programs that you have, including MBA Math Hoops? What advice do you have around designing STEM learning and designing programs that are inclusive around math and that build confidence?
For sure. There are a lot of ways to go with that question. It's an interesting one, Carlos. I think one learning that has stood out for us is the context or the theme of the program really matters, and it can create kind of two directions of growth, if you will. We have, and this has been really since the beginning of the program, we have a cohort of students who see themselves as athletes, but maybe feel less confident in the classroom. And so the program creates an entry point for them to feel like the excellence that they can achieve on the court or on the field can also show up in the classroom, right? And we have another cohort of students who see themselves as math learners and excellent in the classroom, who maybe don't feel as though they are as though they belong, on the court or on the field. Programs like NBA Math Hoops and MLB Player STEM League and MLS STEM Goals, they give those students an opportunity to feel like they can be an athlete too. And that interplay has been a consistent theme over the last decade as we've run the program. Obviously, there are students who excel at both. There are students with all different, backgrounds and levels of confidence in different parts of their schooling. But there's a book, actually, an educator right here in Oakland wrote this children's book over the last year called Math Hoops. And it's about his own classroom story. And it's about that interplay between these two students who have really divergent interests and areas of confidence. And so I think when we think about math learning and we talk about math confidence, it's often very one-dimensional. It's like, okay, well, let's just get students to feel better at doing math. But there are so many ways that you can approach that. And there are so many other things that you can build simultaneously as you're working towards that core goal.
Yeah, and you mentioned something really cool, which is the context piece. I remember attending your global championships at the NBA headquarters in New York. And one of the students there, well, let's just say this, everyone was just swagged out in NBA gear. You had these kids walking into this space like they were like walking onto a basketball court about to play an NBA game. They had swagger, they had confidence, they had a sense of pride. They're wearing these beautiful jerseys. They got the cool cap going on. I mean, they just had a style about them. And they walked in there to throw down on math, but they had swagger and they had style and they had, okay, I want to get cringy here, but they had some math riz. You know what I mean? I had to say it, man. I had to say it. If my kids were here, they would say, Dad, don't ever say this to me. But they had this confidence and swagger about them, which was super cool.
For sure. Yeah. And I think I shared the story recently with Overdeck on their podcast, but there's a school in Camden, New Jersey that won the NBA Math Hoops National Championship. And they put a banner on the front of the school, like on the fence outside, that said 2019 NBA Math Hoops National Champions, like you would for any sports team that won a conference championship or a city championship. And so that kind of cachet around being good at math is something that we can help students accomplish, help students build, because there's that cool factor, right? Like when you walk into the NBA headquarters to do math feels a lot more cool than it does when you're doing a worksheet, that is going to get thrown in the trash eventually.
Yeah, so some academic appeal,
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I think to that end, there's a couple questions here. I think Haley asked for, facilitators that may not have the confidence in their own math abilities or identities, but want to run this program with young people. Like, what advice do you have for folks who don't see themselves with that confidence, but they see this, they want to do it? Like, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah. Well, there are two things that we've done with the program design over time to help attend to this. So the first one is that the entry point to the program, the first lesson, doesn't have anything to do with math. It's just the sportsmanship contract and talking a little bit about how to set core values, if you will, for your MBA Math Hoops program in the classroom. And we do that with each of the different experiences that we have, just so that sometimes the start can be the hardest thing for anything in life. So when an educator starts the program, it's something that they can feel connected to and they can feel confident with, and then it creates that on-ramp. The other part of it that I think is important is that the program is really designed to be student-led over time. And so if you can play a board game, like if you can figure out the rules of a board game, you don't need to know basketball, you don't need to be great at math. You can start learning the program. And as students pick up the rules of the game, they will build ownership over the experience. And then they'll start setting up the game, and then they'll start, timing it, and they'll start running it. And then over time, you can support as an educator in terms of their interpersonal dynamics as they're playing, and you can provide feedback on some of the math components, but it's ideally built for student self-discovery.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to that end, there's a related question of how do you, and you talked a bit about this, creating that exciting environment in a local program with limited space and time. I think our educators, they are pressed for time. They walk in and they don't have a whole lot of time to prep the scene, if you will. What advice or tips and tricks do you have for creating that type of environment that, it may not be at the NBA headquarters in New York, but how do you bring some of those elements into just a regular, maybe even a small space?
Yeah. There are so many examples of how teachers have done this really well. I mean, one of our staff members, Calvin, he was a classroom teacher in Detroit, and he basically turned his classroom into NBA Matthews locker room, right? And so he put up pictures, and he had a standings board and a schedule board in his class. And so, yeah, that takes time and effort. But if you really want to create that environment, the program is meant to be like almost like an educational fantasy sports season, right, for the classroom. And so all the ingredients are there for you to make kids feel like they're a
Yeah.
part of something bigger, a part of something special. In terms of the NBA connection and the teams and all that, I try when I'm speaking publicly about the work that we do across all of our programs to de-emphasize some of the events a little bit, just because the reality is, maybe 1 or 2% of all the students that participate in our program in a given year actually get to go to an arena or actually get to go have that experience with the team. It's just challenging to do that part of the work at scale, but that opportunity is always there. So if you're in a city that's close by a professional sports team, odds are we're probably working somewhere in that area and have an event somewhere in that area, and we'd love to have you come and join us. That opportunity is always open. But there are also institutions in local communities all over the country. There are college athletes, there are minor league sports teams. Many of those entities are really, really community centric, even more so than some of the top level professional sports teams. And so if you're running, MLB player STEM league program in your classroom, and you have a minor league baseball team, in the 30-minute radius around your community, I would encourage you. I wouldn't say don't wait for us. Like, you can reach out to them and say, hey, we're doing this awesome program. We'd love to, bring the kids to a game or something. And oftentimes those types of teams will be very, very enthusiastic about supporting individual educators.
Perfect. And that's a great segue into talking a bit more about your other programs, right? I know we focus on NBA Matthews, but there are a series of other really cool initiatives. Can you walk us through a few of those or all of them?
Sure. Yeah, so there's the sports portfolio, and we've tried to start with sports that are impactful for young people, particularly at the elementary and middle school level. So sports that a lot of students at that age level can access. Basketball is certainly one of them. Baseball and Little League, that's another one. So we have a program with the Major League Baseball Players Association called the MLB Players STEM League, and it has a board game component also built by Tim, as well as a curricular component and then a community component. And then we've launched this year our MLS STEM Goals program, which we built internally, and really excited about that initiative, particularly because the MLS is very much on the front end of building out their long-term community strategy. And so there's such an opportunity to help them to help the league to connect with young people, and help them to build a presence in education that they just have not had historically. And so that suite of three programs rounds out our sports portfolio right now. And then we've been piloting over the last couple of years a program called Eco Tour, which is game-based and allows students to design a performing artist tour across the country while learning about the balance between environmental literacy and financial literacy. And so basically how to balance those two factors as you're creating something like an artist tour. And the mission with that is to connect students to artists, performing artists, in the way that we do with professional sports teams. And so we've started a pilot program with a band called Lawrence, based out of New York City. Going to be working with them again this fall. And over time, the goal is to build this roster of artists that students can connect with as they're participating in the program. And for me, it comes back to, I started in education through music education, and music is a huge passion point for me. For me, it's about creating a suite of different experiences where an educator can say, hey, my students love music, or my students love baseball. It's different for every classroom, right? Or even student to student, but they can really tap into the interests of their own group and find the program that's right for them, but they can still get access to that learn fresh experience, which is, experiential, authentic, connected to the real world, leveraging things that students really care about in the community to build STEM and social emotional skills.
That's awesome. And I need to also drop a quick thank you to my colleague Angelina Garner, who's VP of our um, strategic partnerships work, because she from the beginning she saw the work you were doing, and she said to us, "We must partner with Learn Fresh," and to see that come to fruition was super cool. And now that you're mentioning all these initiatives, we're so excited to be able to take the work that you do, continue to extend that and expand that to the out of school time community. And so that is it's going to be really a great ride with you. I can't wait for the eco tours work. That sounds like super cool. Maybe we can get Taylor Swift to join. Who knows? You know,
Long term.
I
Long
don't
term.
know, but no, we'll see. But I think with that being said, I'm curious, right? We talked about the content partnership, and what I appreciated about you, Nick, is that you wanted to be very much involved in what that transition looked like to take the Learn Fresh content, specifically in Made Math Hoops, and prep it and equip it so that it is available on the Mizzen education platform and available to our 20,000 plus educators. What was that process for you in taking the content and the STEM learning experience and adapt it for use on a platform like Mizzen? Like, what was
Yeah,
that? What did you prioritize? What was the process?
for sure. I think it was a really healthy process for us. One, because it gave us a chance to reflect on our teacher prep strategy, not necessarily the training piece, but how to put together concise, direct material that allows an educator to access our work without necessarily needing to ever sit down for a training, right? And I'm excited to learn from the process of rolling this content partnership out with you, because it'll give us a sense for how efficient we could potentially be long term around our onboarding strategy for teachers, and so that's been awesome. Aside from that, I mean, the actual adaptation of the content of the platform was pretty straightforward. I think because our program is sequential and there's a real purpose to each lesson, it fit right in with the way that you all format things. And ultimately, again, like I shared before, the purpose of the partnership for us is really to just create access for more educators and students. It's impossible for any team of people to reach every educator across the country internationally. And so the more entry points that we can create to our work, the larger the scale of the work over time.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, which is, how do you prepare educators to facilitate? Because that is one thing in a virtual world where we're trying to reach as many educators as possible. It is not feasible, right, to be in the space to do in-person trainings and supports, and so to prepare the facilitation so that it is easy to kind of take in and quick to implement. So for folks, please visit mizzen.org, and you'll see that we have 3 accompanying pro tips. So the MBA Math Hoops program is a 10-week lesson with 3 separate pro tip resources to help you facilitate the MBA Math Hoops experience. And Nick, I think when we look at MLS, Major League Baseball, which, by the way, we're going to get to, and I missed the order here a little bit, but we want to know more about you. I know we talked about the MBA program, and congratulations on that. But you are from Philly, and right now the Dodgers and the Philadelphia Phillies are like neck and neck for the top records in baseball right now. So LA's up by a game. Like we top the standings. We're right there, neck and neck. Philly, LA, kind of battling it out for the best record in Major League Baseball.
Well, so I'm originally from New York, though, so I'm actually a Yankees fan, and
Oh, wait,
I
what?
happen
Did
to
I get that
I
wrong?
appreciate the
Oh my
Phillies.
gosh.
I enjoy going to their games, but I'm a Yankees fan, so we might see you in the World Series. We'll
Oh
see.
my gosh. Okay. Well, if a New Yorker ever catches me saying that they're from Philly, I might be in trouble. You know. But tell us a little bit more about, now that we look at this incredible body of work, where you've taken Learn Fresh, the amount of new programs and initiatives that you've launched and are launching, your focus on data and research and analytics. Um, there's so much there. It's a rich history of youth development impact. How did you get to this place? Share a little bit about where kind of like, where did it start? what inspired this passion towards youth development work, this type of learning, and how you ended up where you are today.
So my mom worked as a teacher, and my dad had a STEM career as in accounting and then business. And so these two themes have kind of always been threaded throughout my life from the time that I was very young. I mentioned before that my passion for education really was built through music. And so I started playing piano when I was like 4 years old. I played brass instruments throughout high school into college. Even though I went to school, so I went to Syracuse for my undergrad for entrepreneurship and marketing, I still continued to teach kind of informally on the side. And so when I graduated, I had no desire to go work for a bank or a financial institution or anything like that. That's kind of where they track you to when you're in business school and undergrad. And so I went to work for a nonprofit based in Hartford, Connecticut. I taught in Drum Corps International, which is this performing arts activity that happens over the course of each summer with touring groups across the country. And I realized that I wanted to kind of pivot into education more formally. So I went to get my master's in education, was at the Harvard Ed School, and I met the team that was putting together the foundations of the organization. Tim was a part of that. As I mentioned, another man named Bill Doherty, who's a former NBA executive based in Rhode Island, and then Khalil Fuller, our founding CEO. And I joined the team really with the focus of building out the program model. It's like, how can we take these products and curricula and bring them into an infrastructure, a world that allowed professional teams and athletes to contribute to the work? And started working on that in 2013. We launched our first program with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that really started the growth trajectory. From there, we entered Denver with the Nuggets, then the Warriors in the Bay Area. And then it started to snowball, and more teams got excited about the work. The programs continued to scale up, and now we've find ourselves a decade later with a suite of programs working with different leagues and players associations. I think the other important part of my story that's just worth sharing is just the international context. As a young adult into kind of mid-adulthood, I've built a real passion for travel and learning about different cultures around the world. I've traveled to almost 50 countries and all 7 continents, and it's really, really important for me. I feel like I never know enough about the world and people, and so I like to continue exploring. But the thing that excites me the most, to be honest, about what we do is that I've been in South Africa and been in Latin America and been in Australia. Our team has, and have been on the ground watching kids play our games and participating in our programs, and it looks and feels the same everywhere that we go, which I think is
Cool.
such a
That's cool.
really rare thing in education. Yeah. And so that really inspires me to pursue the global vision for the organization, just because there's something there that is just different than most other programs. And I'm so excited about, bringing that to life over the next 10 years.
That's so cool, man. Okay, you got to share with us, being in multiple continents with NBA Math Hoops, is there a particular story, something that surprised you about how this type of learning showed up in other countries? Like what do you have any maybe 1 or 2 stories about that?
Yeah. There are a couple. So one that really stood out was actually with our baseball program, MLB Players Sim League. We went to a baseball tournament in the Bahamas that had students from different Latin American countries. And there was a group of students who were on the Cuban, like it was probably their like under 13 team or something like that. And they had traveled over from Cuba. They were playing with other players from the Bahamas and a couple other island countries, Puerto Rico maybe. And based upon like the political dynamic between the US and Cuba, it's very rare, I would say, that we have the opportunity as Americans to be able to engage directly with young people from Cuba. And it was just such an amazing exchange because they were so excited about the program. They picked up on the rules right away. They were playing with the other students, and it just created an opportunity that I feel like it would be very difficult for us to have otherwise. It was just such a pure and amazing exchange. That's one. And then Calvin and I went to a Boys and Girls Club in Johannesburg for a tournament maybe a year or so ago. And the best part about that experience is that we equipped the Boys and Girls Club staff there completely remotely. So we had never been to Johannesburg to launch the program or train them. And they ran the tournament for NBA Math Hoops exactly like we would here in the
That's
US.
cool. Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
a
Yeah,
complete replication. And so it was so amazing to just see the work transfer like that and to see other people have so much passion for what we do and put so much attention to detail into setting up an experience for young people on the other side of the world. So those are two that stood out for sure.
that's awesome, man. And I think those two scenarios are really key when we think about just facilitation, right? The idea of and some of this pops up even ahead of this conversation. I had folks look at a recent article that was written by the Overdeck Family Foundation, entitled "Perspectives: The Learning in Hidden Play." And they talk about the importance of integrating play and fun and joy in rigorous academic subjects. So when you think about the experiences in Johannesburg, in other countries, and you think about the facilitators right behind those experiences, like what are additional tips and tricks to be able to take pretty significant research around play, as cited by the Overdeck Family Foundation in their July 2024 article. The idea of integrating play, bringing joy and excitement, bringing a sense of belonging. And this kind of international experience that you've seen.
Yeah.
Like, what are things that facilitators can continue to do to bring joy, fun, play into academic rigorous environments?
For sure. And I think play, the ultimate value in play is that it's such a starting point. So to set up an experience, I think attention to detail is important, right? And so if you build something with quality, even if you build it with your own creativity in your own learning environment, students will respond to that. It's not unlike anything else in the world. When something is done with intention, that shows. And so that's the beginning. But for me, play, I think it creates a less stressful environment for young people to absorb information and to immerse themselves in learning. But then there are really great spillover effects from that connected to student-teacher relationship, right? So if you create a joyful environment for your students, students will feel more excited to show up in your classroom or in your program. They'll feel more comfortable showing up. They'll feel more excited to show up. They'll look forward to that environment, right? And so it creates an environment in which students become more receptive to the information. There's also the confidence piece, right? And so if students are able to build some foundations of confidence through play, that has spillover effects in terms of their ability to access other information in the discipline, right? And so for us, students may work on their operational proficiency through the board game and may use the curriculum to work on, percentage decimal fraction conversion. But because they have that environment in which they've experienced that environment in which they feel confident and connected to math, now when they show up in a math class and work on higher level skills, they're like, I can do this. Like I've done this somewhere else. I've succeeded somewhere else. I've enjoyed this somewhere else. Now I can achieve here. And those future effects of play and joy in the moment are invaluable, very difficult to measure, but they're there. And we hear them anecdotally, and we believe deeply that that's a huge reason for the purpose and use of play and learning.
Hearing you say all that, I know we have a few minutes left, but I wrote down my own little kind of math equation, maybe. The idea of attention plus intention equals retention, right? So if there's an attention to detail, attention to the environment, and if we quote Tim talking about the intentionality of how the original Learn Fresh product was designed in NBA Math Hoops, and you talk about if you build that type of environment, you'll have young people coming back. They'll want to stick around. There'll be a strong sense of ownership and belonging. So attention plus intention equals retention when it comes to kids coming to program. Because we know when a young person continues to return to these programs, the impact is that much greater. We used to call that back in the day, dosage, right? Although it sounds a little too clinical, but the idea of consistent participation over time and the significant impacts and learning impacts that a young person experiences by coming back continuously to the experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with the construction of our seasons, right? One of the things we encourage educators to do is, don't do MBA math hoops in 2 weeks. Maybe if you're in a summer program, sure. But, implement the program once a week or twice a week over the course of a 3-month period of time so that it creates an environment in which students can continually get excited about coming back to that work week after week, participating in their season, building up their team, working towards the goal of going to a championship. And that energy and enthusiasm will transcend other things that you're doing with students during the week because they'll look forward to that NBA Math Hoops day on Friday when they play their games and work towards their schedule. So that consistency and that structure and that intentionalities you're talking about is so important for achieving some of those other effects that can come from the program.
That's so cool, man. We've got just a couple of minutes left, so I'll ask you this one question: what is the future for Learn Fresh? Well, what's out there? What are you excited about? And maybe you can add, what are you hearing from young people about the experiences? I mean, are there places where they want you to grow and do more, or maybe different ways of approaching the work? Like, what's the future for Learn Fresh?
For sure. I want to continue to invest in depth because it connects back to what we're hearing from teachers and students that there's more to be done with this theme. And so a couple tangible ways that we're doing that: building out extension curriculum for specific grade levels that attend to each of the different standards for 5th grade math, 4th grade math, 6th grade math, that students can use alongside MBA Math Hoops, and it's all themed within the basketball context. We can do that for each of our programs. Also diving deeper into social and emotional learning. So we're about to launch a partnership with an organization called Game Changer. They're a Dick's Sporting Goods subsidiary, and all of that will be focused on taking lessons from the sports and corporate world around each of the pillars, each of the SEL pillars that are built into the Math Hoops curriculum and STEM curriculum, and creating additional sets of content around those lessons. And so depth around the content is very important for me. In terms of breadth, the ultimate vision is to have every educator be a Learn Fresh educator. And so creating that suite of experiences that allows educators and students to connect through the thing that feels most authentic for them, the passion point area of interest that's most real and relevant for them, is something that we're working towards over time. And that means new partnerships with different entities, different artists, entertainers, athletes, to continue to realize that comprehensive vision. And connected to that is the global elements of the work. And so as of this winter, we will have programming active in Paris, Johannesburg, Tokyo, Seoul, Melbourne, Australia, across Latin America. That is the groundwork for building a truly global community for our work. And ultimately, that creates new opportunities for us too, right? Because we'll be able to bring students together from different cultures and communities, not just within the US and the 50 states here, but around the world, to be able to share. And that's not something that will necessarily scale, but it's something that adds value and creates additional motivation for teachers and students to participate.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Nick, chock full of great stuff. An hour just flew by. Folks, you heard the challenge: every educator to be a Learn Fresh educator. Let's go get it. Mizzen is going to be right beside you, Nick, to get that done. And folks, stay tuned for more amazing stuff with Nick. Learn Fresh, Mizzen, in the future as we continue to go after that goal of every educator being a STEM learning educator. Thanks for joining Mizzen Meets. Have a great week out there. And Nick, brother, thanks so much for sharing your life, your work, your passion. It's been a great combo. And Tim, congratulations on the impact, brother, always through your